His consciousness wobbled back and forth, teetering on the brink of annihilation. He didn't have enough anything. Blood, flesh, bones, peace, anger, or happiness. Those things which form a human, there was not enough within him. He had to gather up the falling droplets to pack them in again and stand up once more. Subaru regains consciousness, waking up to yet another unfamiliar ceiling, as the memories of what had occurred slowly fill back into his mind. The first thing he thinks of is Rem, who already sits beside him. She isn't positive to responding to that name yet, and he notices he had been grasping her hand the entire time. He looks down at his arm, no longer black with the dragon's blood, as Rem tells him to stay in bed should he have yet another injury. He, however, has no time for this. He has too much he needs to do. He wants to see Mazzelda and inquire about Louise, worried what she had been up to. The one thing that Subaru will not consider doing is stopping. He may have learned to think about his own life, and he may have learned to rely on others, but one thing he still needs to learn is to take a break. Rem tells Subaru to look to his left as Louise lays there asleep. The village they were in existed deep inside a vast forest, and it looked like a world where the level of civilization's improvement had come to a halt. He wishes to speak with Mazzelda and Vincent as they meet up with, you know what, I'm just going to call him Abel since the story is really going along with it. Abel is now wearing what seems like an Oni mask, and the Shudrock are borderline serving him, as Tarita stops Subaru from approaching him before he lets him pass. Subaru demands to speak to Vincent Abelix, one-on-one, and when he says that name, the meeting room grows into an aura with a strong tension. Abel requests everyone vacate the room, wishing to speak to Subaru alone. Subaru asks Abel if what happened was a dream, and he asks if that would satisfy him. The scene Subaru saw was no illusion. Hearing that, he felt something profoundly heavy pierce the back of his chest. Abel commanded them to destroy the encampment, done with no casualties on their side, and Subaru perceives that as him bragging, but no. He considers the feat to be Subaru's. The reason why they were able to achieve flawless victory was because they had detailed knowledge of the enemy's organization. Abel considered this a compliment, but to Subaru, why would he be happy about being a useful tool of war? He doesn't want to assist in a war, but Abel says no matter what, if it meant saving Rem, that information would have still been divulged. While Subaru was heavily damaged, he was given medicine that made it easier to spill the beans, but Subaru says were he conscious, he could have been part of a war council and opposed casualties. Abel asks if he could somehow convince the Imperial soldiers, the people who do not know nor have any other means aside from bloodshed, to find a more appropriate method. In return for his perseverance, someone other than him would die. Perhaps that person may be a complete stranger, or they could be akin to your other half. When you stand still and indulge in your foolish thoughts, it means you are allowing that to happen. Subaru bites back, asking who Abel thinks he is. Does he think himself a god? No, he is no god or hero. He is also different from those wicked observers. He is a king. There is a nugget of truth in this discussion, and not to be a centrist, but it does kind of lie in the middle, sort of. Subaru's utopian ideal of solving a national conflict with zero casualties is just that, utopian. They are in a nation that, as Abel puts it, has no means aside from bloodshed. To convince the other side would be to wear down decades of national propaganda and centuries of culture to have them decide killing isn't the option. However utopian it is though, it is still very noble. Later on, Abel suggests some absolutely fucking insane war crime tier shit, showing the divide of the Lagunican and Valakian ideology even further. Subaru is right in that life is sacred and minimizing loss should be the #1 priority, but Abel is right in air quotes, and that there are some situations you can't talk your way out of, and Valakian war is one of them. This also leads to a very unique character conflict for Subaru. In all of these arcs, Subaru could always rely on his mind and his tongue to make sure people don't die, but in a situation like this, how possible is that? Without his words, what is Subaru? Abel in EX4 showed us that he is willing to make the necessary sacrifices if it means a future peacetime, basically being the only way he could wave a white flag with Lagunica. He needs a reason to present on the surface to those bloodthirsty masses, and Subaru stands in his way, to him naively thinking he can achieve peace without loss. It's almost as if Abel has to deny Subaru's way of thinking because otherwise, what was Balroy's sacrifice for? I've mentioned it before, but his sparing Priscilla showed he is truly not in line with Valakia's will, and EX4 sends that message home. I'll be very interested to see what the future of Abel's character is. He gives him his full title, the 77th Emperor of the Sacred Valakian Empire, causing Subaru's mind to go blank. How is it in the middle of this jungle he gets stuck with an emperor? How can he trust a man who won't even show his face? Abel calls him tiresome. There's no reason for him to know his face to begin with, as he does not show it outside of the capital. He reminds him that the weak-willed must die, the frail must die, and the cowardly must die. Subaru recognizes this chasm in Valakian and Lagunican ideology thanks to Todd, but he says it doesn't make any sense. If Abel were the Emperor, why did he attack the soldiers' camp? Could he just talk to them? He reminds Subaru that he has no death wish, and that the soldiers deployed here were dispatched to kill him. And now, Subaru had become embroiled in this. The people of the camp likely know nothing about this, however. Todd and his group believed they were after the Shudrock. He says to Subaru that in order to protect himself and Rem, he weighed the Shadrakians and the Imperial soldiers on a scale. What had already occurred cannot be changed. Those soldiers will not come back to life. The dead will not speak of anything. Subaru squeezes his eyes shut. How dare Abel say whatever he pleases? There was a way to revive the dead, which only Subaru held. Well, at least to his knowledge. He was trapped in a dilemma of choosing which side should be left standing at the cost of the other. More than anything, he did not have the courage to return by death to find a way out. Abel once again calls him foolish. Why does he always desire to curry favor with others? Always gazing at them, intentionally constructing himself to be that way, similar to how a warrior would hone their skills. He has concealed his own heart with a deception called charity. Intense rage courses through Subaru. To someone who knew nothing about Subaru or Return by Death, it was impossible to understand even a fraction of what he had been saddled with. Abel reminds Subaru that the soldier's true goal is a secret, one the soldiers and even the commander do not know. However, should they kill the Shadrakians, they kill the one group Abel can turn to. They are Abel's path to victory. Subaru thinks to all the people killed at the encampment, and the people who died fighting the White Whale or Betelgeuse or Pristella. Compared to those unpreventable casualties, the number of lives lost here was greater. The enemies they fought were not witch beasts or evil, but human. Why did they have to be killed, he asks. There was no other method. Abel responds, questioning the fundamental aspect of Subaru's ideology. He had never fallen into a situation where he had to build a relationship with someone whose values greatly differed from his. He considered most people rational. He would define the Sin Archbishops or witches as different beings, meaning he wouldn't have to knock morals with them. To me personally, this feels like cope. It is a method of dehumanization from Subaru to make the lives he was responsible for taking more palatable for him. It isn't to say that they weren't unjustified, as I touched on earlier. Sometimes taking someone's life is your only path forward, and Subaru truthfully understands that. But when it comes to someone like Betelgeuse or witch cultists and stuff like that, he is stripping them of their humanity to justify their death, and no amount of surface-level madness or cruelty undoes that consideration of being a human. Subaru gives up the argument. He gives up this battle of morality with Abel. He just wants to bring Rem home. If this were another person's affair or something in a book, he would turn the pages with excitement. This was reality. In a foreign country with no one to rely on, with a fierce internal struggle that should shake the nation about to take place, he asks for the location to the nearest town or village. It will not be an easy path, but easy or difficult, he will walk it. He will pick the path he agrees with, and he has mixed feelings about it, but he wishes Abel his best. Abel reminds him that, even without intervention, they would have been scorched. This was already their fight too. Subaru stops, thinking that he will never be able to become like Abel. Subaru feared the Valakian Emperor. The Shudrock treated Subaru's decision with respect, and he speaks with the children of the village, them being fully aware that war is coming. He wanted them to remain ignorant, but as expected, such deceit was a facile idea that did not apply to the jungle. Rem tells him they are all set to head out. Her reaction was the most surprising to him. Expecting to be opposed stubbornly, she instead immediately worked to leave. A wooden rack was assembled for Subaru by the Shudrock to carry Rem on his back while traveling, and he apologizes for having the tribe do everything. Zelda, however, calls him their comrade, causing Subaru to drop his eyes. He can't face her. He started this and now he flees. She says not to trouble himself. They fight to prove their worth. Protect Rem and Luis. That is the honor we expect from our comrade. Holly and Kuna join Subaru, Rem, and Luis as they head to Garal, the nearest town. They travel with their two Shudrock guards, and Subaru is tired. He says he can only withstand it because he's the oldest sibling, which doesn't make any sense to Rem. She asks if she had siblings, and Subaru is sort of taken aback. Whatever she wants to know about herself, he will answer, but she's unsure. What kind of person he is, what she senses and what she sees do not match. She has placed a thin sheet of paper between him and evil incarnate, and Subaru says that he will wait till she is ready to tell her about her sister. Holly and Kuna return from getting dinner for the party, and the two get to bantering. Rem calls them good friends, and as much as Kuna hates it, the two can't be separated, being born on the same day, kinda like sisters. Rem states she wishes she had someone like that to honestly talk with. Subaru goes back on his earlier pledge, telling her that she has an older sister, who holds her dear from the bottom of her heart. He doesn't understand it, but if she closes her eyes and tries to imagine it, she might be able to utilize the synesthesia. She tries, but doesn't feel anything. This volume is kind of chock full of siblings, with Todd and Jamal's legal relationship, Holly and Kuna's friendly sibling-like relationship, and later on, Flop and Medium's actual blood connection. I wonder if this is supposed to contrast how Subaru and Rem currently are, as well as Rem and Ram's relationship that Rem has no clue about. I feel like there's a lot to dig in here, but I'm just not sure where to start. Maybe later. The party safely arrives at Garal, taking 4 days in total. Surprisingly, Subaru's mana poisoning has still not killed him. Subaru, Rem, Holly, and Kuna say their goodbyes as Kuna tosses him the very horn of the snake witch beast he had defeated. With that size, it'll fetch a high price. The thoughtfulness had rendered him completely speechless. Despite all this, he would still leave them. He tries to speak up, but Kuna tells him not to think anything stupid. You gotta fight to protect the ones you want to protect. Luis whimpers about Holly and Kuna leaving, being especially attached to Holly. Even this would not allow Subaru to change his impression of her, however. They see inspections occurring at the town entrance, but with no identification or bribes, they can't approach from the front. Subaru curses Abel for being the reason it's so strict at the entrance. Rem chided him about not having a plan, but he does. If it were just him and Rem, it would be impossible, but it's time to demonstrate his skill on relying on others. This is when Volume 27 starts a trend that I'm not all that fond of. We jump to them having passed the inspection off-screen, so that it could be explained to us how it happened. Arc 7, for some reason, at times opts to discard a fairly traditional structure of build-up and then climax and then resolution, to instead go for build-up, resolution, and then climax. We are informed of how much of a threat the inspection site is, only to have it resolved off-screen and to see the aftermath, and then retroactively get the climax explained to us. I'll save my breath for the end of the volume though, as people who have read it will know exactly what I'm referring to. At the very least, we got Flop and Medium out of the exchange, so it was more than worth it. They are two siblings, with Flop responsible for peddling goods and Medium acting as his bodyguard. In exchange for passage, Subaru had given them the wooden rack made for Rem, something that Flop had deemed a unique and fascinating creation. Flop is under the impression that Subaru and Rem are husband and wife, as Subaru's initial excuse was going to be brother and sister, but when Medium and Flop turned out to be related, he panicked and Rem filled in the gaps. They reach an inn with Rem, Luis, and Medium in a separate room. Flop and Subaru get to talking, having turned in the horn in exchange for currency, and Flop resolves to show them the way to find guards to head back to Lagunica. Subaru is a bit paranoid of leaving Luis alone, but had no choice but to put his faith in her. What a journey this had already been, and Subaru was reaching his limit of relying on others, something Flop understands. He advises Subaru to not put his full weight on others. If you examined him and Medium separately, their weaknesses would become apparent. However, they come together to form one cohesive whole and cover each other's flaws. Subaru had thought there would be none in this empire with whom his ideals would be shared. Flop's way of thinking is by no means common. He informed Subaru that the capital had been seeming rather rowdy recently, but Vincent has been such a wonderful ruler that surely he has it under control. As they talk, he thinks of asking Flop something, when somewhere, something faintly hard-sounding reverberated. He resets to literally minutes before this conversation. To Subaru, this was the most terrifying situation one could be in. A scene he remembered, a conversation he has heard, and without a cause of death. It felt so unreal to the point it was enough to question if the authority had activated by mistake, but he knew he must trust return by death. Flop is confused by Subaru's sudden change in demeanor, but unfortunately, Flop was Subaru's only potential suspect. Quite a lot of people had killed Subaru until now, but they all possessed a rational explanation for doing so, meaning Flop could be ruled out. Subaru perks up, asking Flop why he's so nice to them, which catches the man off guard. What he and his sister are doing is revenge. Long ago, him and Medium lived on the edge of death. Unhappy adults were beating unhappy children, so he became a merchant to lift them out of poverty, to bring others out of unhappiness. Him and his sister had resisted against the world which pushes misfortune onto them for revenge. Helping him and Rem was just a part of that. Subaru tells him he doesn't like the vibes of the street, asking him to go another way, which Flop obliges. He then looks over Subaru's shoulder, only for his eyes to widen, as blood pours out of Subaru's mouth. His throat had been slashed open. Reset. Subaru's face had gone pale, and Flop asks him what's wrong. He demands they return home, now, but then can he go back? He had not grasped the enemy's true nature. The dangers of going back to Rem swirled in his head. He can't go to Rem. He had no idea who to be wary of. Suddenly, Flop looks down the street. A long way off, someone was screaming. No, multiple people were. A giant wheel was headed right for Flop and Subaru, as a dragon carriage barrels towards them. The impact engulfs Subaru's entire body with its intensity, a festering pain, an aching assaulting his entire body. The existence named Subaru was synchronized with a phenomenon called pain. Natsuki Subaru was precisely pain itself. Pain was what he was, and therefore it was only natural to be in pain. He resets again, grabbing his shoulders and trembling. Even if his body did not remember, his soul recalled. The pain he had just felt gnawed at his very being. First, instant death, second, beheading, and third, ran over. There is no doubt. The aim is to kill Natsuki Subaru. The most frightening thing of it all was that, despite return by death triggering thrice, Subaru had obtained no further information other than the fact that an enemy existed. Subaru stops his shaking immediately upon a single thought. When I die, what happens to Flop? As soon as Subaru is able to put the safety of someone else in his mind, he snaps out of that fearful thought pattern. He grabs Flop's hand, rushing towards the bar and asking to hire the strongest guard they have. They meet with Rowan, a drunk passed out in the corner. Subaru wakes him up, slamming the entire Witch Beast Horn Fund on the table. Rowan asks Subaru his name, but before he can answer, He tells him he's being tailed. The drunkenness the man gave off disappeared, radiating a powerful presence. Instantly, a man with a large build fell at the entrance of the bar. Flop and the barkeep rush to his side, but Subaru yells to stay away, as the dying man expands, shining bright scarlet before exploding. The patrons rush to the entrance to escape the bar, only for a second explosion to occur. Rowan attempts to lead Flop, Subaru, and the barkeep out to the back door, but it's stuck shut. Rowan attempts to slash the door, as something nags at the back of Subaru's mind. They threw a man-turned bomb into the shop, then used another bomb, obstructed the entrance, and sealed the back door. He tried to put his discomfort into words, but it was already too late. Rowan's body teetered backwards, then fell. His head had been destroyed. The barkeep looks on in horror before his upper half is destroyed. Stepping over the torn door, a man with a damp cloth wrapped around his face appeared. He had a firm grip on his axe in his hands. Subaru's soul quivered at his vindictiveness, his dreadfulness. Subaru asks, why? As the man lifted up his axe. Subaru repeats, why, but the man replies, he won't tell him anything. It would be troublesome if he ran away again. Subaru matches the voice with a voice he had heard before, as his skull is split open with a single blow. Todd is fucking different. Unlike those we've seen before, Elsa, Roswell, the archbishops, Todd has nothing to say. He isn't some deranged sin archbishop, he isn't some mindless witch beast, he isn't some being who has lived for 400 years plotting world domination or something. Todd is an ordinary human being who has no grand villain monologue, just brutality. No chances for Subaru to outsmart his opponents, no time to think, no time to run. He only puts his axe in his head. I'm also led to believe one core thing about Todd that is yet to be revealed, his motivation. It has not been stated yet, but I think it could be inferred. Subaru had specifically talked about his greed, and how he will trample over things if it means he gets to be the first one to see Rem wake up. In Arc 7, Subaru puts people's lives on a scale if it means he gets to save and protect Rem. He runs away from the battle in part to protect her. Todd is likely a foil for that aspect of Subaru. It was mentioned a few times in Volume 26 that he has a fiancée, and he hopes that she waits for him during his long mission. What Todd is doing right now is ensuring victory, killing a dangerous man so that he can see his fiancée again, much like how Subaru will do what he can, and kill what he must to protect his loved ones. Todd does the same with only a different ideology. The feeling of needing to vomit, the acts committed against him, and the deafening ringing in Subaru's ears tormented him. If this is the nearest city to the jungle, of course survivors of his raising would flee here, yet the thought did not cross his mind at all. Todd was Subaru's enemy. A word used in manga or games, but right here, for the first time, Subaru had considered a living, breathing human his enemy. An enemy that he created by none other than his own actions, as ReZero once again proved that indeed, it does have stakes. Returned by death cannot fix everything. He tries to pull himself together, asking Flop to get his medicine from Rem so that he can get Flop to safety. Subaru hopes that when Flop arrives at the inn alone, Rem would realize something had gone wrong. As Subaru turns to head to the bar, he hears a hoarse voice come from behind him, as Flop begins to scream out. A knife had pierced his thigh. Before he can think, he rushes to his side. The thing is, why was Flop not killed? In warfare, snipers might injure their opponents so their comrades would come to save them. A nightmarish method that took advantage of those who had a sense of fellowship. Immediately after, something collides with Subaru, blowing off his right forearm. The only word that flashes through his mind is mistake, as Todd looks down at him, glaring back with bloodshot eyes. Todd remarks he needs to make sure to properly sharpen his axe. When he raises it to kill Subaru, Flop jumps onto him, telling Subaru to run away. Todd quickly shakes him off, tossing him to the ground. 1, 2, and 3. Todd places his axe directly in Flop's face. Witnessing the alleyway become soaked with blood, Subaru's mouth fell open in disbelief. Subaru barely mutters. He gets it. Todd resents him. He feels the anguish of letting his inadequacy lead to Flop's death again. Yelling out, he begs Todd not to bring everyone into it. He only replies with an, what do you mean by resent? It's not resentment. You kill a poisonous snake not because you resent it, but because you fear it. For that, you use anything at your disposal to kill it. There was no lie in Todd's response or attitude, as he looked down at Subaru with a smile. You are the same as me. I will not give you time. Subaru searches for the correct words. With Returned by Death, he would find a through line behind various events, but right here, right now, nothing works. He calls out, begging Todd to wait. I will not wait, he replies. That was when Natsuki Subaru was killed. What should he do? He does not possess even the slightest idea. Within this 20-minute span, Subaru had already lost his life 5 times. He had made no progress, and even now he is being watched. His mind races. There is no option. With the Sin Archbishops, they had authorities which had weaknesses. However, Todd would use everything he could. He would not rely on anything, and did not take damage to the surroundings into account. In order to kill what must be killed, the only advantage Subaru had was Returned by Death. As these thoughts race through his mind, Subaru catches onto a faint thread. There was one, barely present connection. Todd would make sure to utilize surprise attacks to diminish the damage to himself. Subaru looks up, yelling out Todd's name. "Todd, I know you're here." He screams out that Todd had survived by some devil's luck, but he won't let him get away this time. There was a chance that he would become enraged by Subaru's provocations, but he trusted it would not come to pass. Todd's caution towards Subaru grew stronger, meaning he must pick fight or flight. If he fights, then he must get Rowan involved. If he picks flight, then he would need to grab Rem and escape from the city. He gives Flop a brief explanation and heads back to the inn for Rem. She is, however, very understanding, immediately acting to retrieve their luggage because she had never unpacked. Subaru, Rem, Luis, Flop, and Medium all get on the O'Connell family ox, Boatcliff. They rampage through the streets to escape the city, but as they approach the inspection area, the path is filled with men clad in armor. Todd had changed plans. Jamal stands, screaming at them about the witch beast, as Medium kicks off her seat to fly straight into the enemy. She begins to solo the Imperial soldiers in front of her, before Jamal stops a rampage by sending her flying. Subaru notes the clear difference in strength, but luckily, Medium gets a shonen power-up from Flop telling her that his sister can do it. A flurry of blades assaulted Jamal's entire body, parrying with his dual swords. Rem throws a crate at Jamal, buying them just enough time to pull Medium out of the fray and saving her. Finally, Subaru's field of vision opens up, freeing him from this torturous city. Or, so we thought. A silhouette plummets towards Subaru from above the gate, an axe raised high into the air. A single strike swung downwards. The blow was one that Rem nor Medium were able to react to, something that could not be guarded against if it had not been predicted. This is where Natsuki Subaru would surely lose his life, if Subaru had not had the foresight to intercept Todd's sneaky attack. Using one of Medium's machetes, he protects his head because that is what Todd would do. Luis clings onto him, freeing the pressure from Subaru's wrist and causing Todd to stumble back. Subaru stands up, yelling out that "You're watching, right? Do it." And then, it flew straight across, as an arrow pierced Todd's side, throwing him off the cart and causing him to tumble to the ground. Holly and Kuna had awaited this very moment. That nasty, fucking Emperor. After days of traveling back to the Shudrock village, Subaru is determined. He marches right back to Abel, pulling his mask off and pulling back to hit him directly in the face until he gets stopped by Mazelda. Not the face, she says, so he compromises and punches him in the gut. Abel recoils from the hit before quickly composing himself and commenting on the noisy company he brought, pointing out Flop and Medium. Rem informs Abel that they are now being targeted by the city soldiers, but he corrects her. They are being targeted by those who serve the country. He tells Subaru that this is the fate he has tied himself to, even before encountering the Shudrock. Subaru doesn't disagree, but he states that he alone should suffer the consequences. He refuses to show kindness to Abel, who had foreseen this entire scenario coming, and he retorts that he simply came all the way to lay out dull words of abhorrence, as if he didn't warn him. Latching onto the closest peace and safety you could find, understand that this was the penalty for not using your head. Fellows like you value what is seen with your own foolish eyes more than the words of the wise. The intensity of falling raindrops is more eloquent than anything that could have come from my mouth. Thanks to that, you must feel it keenly. That for you, there is nowhere to run. Subaru stammers. What is it you want to do? To regain what was stolen. To that end, the current empire is his adversary, and it is Subaru's enemy as well. Subaru responds, so everything rests in the palm of your hand, but no. Abel only holds some people. It is because of the portion he could not control that he sits upon the dirt. It seemed like self-deprecation. It was unusual, the first time ever that Subaru had heard Abel mock himself. Flop suddenly enters the scene, introducing himself to the Shudrock and looking forward to the ritual. Abel inquires about his life as a peddler and asks how acquainted he is with Garal. A peddler might know a byway or two. Abel's master plan? The fall of Garal is one step closer. That city will become their next base. Subaru's brain digested the contents of that bold proclamation and reached an immediate conclusion. Abel is absurd. Abel asks if he knows of the difference between an offensive and defensive military force, and he follows up by mentioning the law of threefold attack, a theory in which the attacking side must have 3 times the strength of the defending side. Clearly, they are outnumbered here. The commander of the city, Zakir Osman, is a solid and boring strategist, but with that ability comes no weak point. On top of their inferior military strength, the enemy commander is a big shot counted among the elite. Subaru tells Abel he is vehemently against fighting, only wanting to go home with Rem. Would he be safe in another town, though? No matter where he goes, his peace can no longer be secured. He intended to grant Subaru time to fully realize it and let it seep into his blood. Subaru notes what Flop said in the city about the state of the capital, and asks if Abel can prove he isn't some crazy person. He replies that the capital is using a fake remarkably similar to himself, his double, Shisha Gold. Flop butts in because he has no fucking idea what's going on, asking Abel to explain why he hopes for Garal to fall, because without a shadow of a doubt, Abel is the Emperor. He refuses to give up any of his knowledge as a peddler that will cause misfortune to others. Abel is not pleased, stating his efforts will bear no fruit. This is the land of the wolves. Flop responds, however, even in the land of the wolves, sheep also live. If wolves were to come and bite his ass, he would ride his ox cart and run away with his sister. He has repeated that over and over till this day. Abel offers to buy the information he has, and he responds by stating he is very stubborn, refusing to comply with anything he can't agree on. Subaru and Rem exit, letting Abel and Flop negotiate. For days, Subaru had been focusing on his anger at Abel, avoiding speaking with Rem. There was a limit on how much he could run from things he did not like, though. She notes Abel is likely adding various conditions, causing Flop to not budge. Subaru says, however, that Flop is a good man, and Rem intervenes, saying you can't simply say he's good. He doesn't want to hurt others with his knowledge, but how does he account for the casualties that will arise without his knowledge? Subaru bites back, saying that she's just arguing to argue, a fake accusation that he would have nothing to do with. I think the situation Rem is speaking of is in fact not a fake accusation, but it closely relates to the trolley problem. While the outcome is not as well known or as set in stone as the trolley problem, the situation has already been forced onto Flop by Abel. He either divulges the information on how to enter and an unknown amount of people die, or he refuses to give up the intel and an unknown amount of people die. What it comes down to, especially for Flop, is harm reduction. Would giving Abel the information lead to less death? Considering he does not even care about civilian casualties, that might be unlikely. By not divulging the information, he could be dooming the Arakians. Just like Subaru in Phase 1, Flop is now in a position to put the lives of people on a scale. Rem considers Flop's perspective a fairy tale, indirectly calling out Subaru as well, because he had the same point of view against Vincent earlier. Subaru points out that earlier she didn't want battle. Has she accepted we have to fight? He brings up her not packing up at the inn. She tried to run away from him again, didn't she? Rem's silence is piercing. If you can't believe me, it's fine. It's painful, but I get it. But the people waiting for you, the people who hold you dear in their hearts, are real. If you don't like me, don't talk to me. I'll endure it, but please, don't try to leave. His voice shakes, begging with her. Please do not shut me out of your life. Whether those droplets of tears that appeared were the result of his self-pity, or of his petition to Rem, was unknown even to himself. Truly, he was just being exceedingly pathetic. It was so absurd it made him laugh, even if he was not given up on. It would not be surprising were he to be abandoned because of his begging right now. He continued to expose his hopeless and pitiful self in front of Rem. He had decided to show his weakness only in front of Rem. However, that did not mean he wanted Rem, amnesiac and with no one to rely on, and alone in another country, to shoulder the heavy burden that was Natsuki Subaru. Holy shit, I love this. Subaru as a character feels so organic, so grounded. It doesn't feel like character flaws are introduced in that arc to be tackled and forgotten. Natsuki Subaru feels like a constant, like a human. His issues with his self-worth have massively improved 27 volumes in, but those negative thoughts still gnaw at the back of his head. 7 arcs in, he is still attempting to learn the distribution of his burdens, going from going all in on himself, putting too much on others, and now where he understands other people's boundaries and even his own. A silence enveloped the space between them. She wasn't trying to abandon him. Luis knocks over Subaru as Yutakata runs over trying to tell her to stop, and Subaru hands her back over to the child. Rem notes how he looks at that kid, and it puzzles her. What does she want him to do? What did Rem wish for? She doesn't want a battle, but she doesn't think they can keep running forever. Flop's words are not realistic, but she also can't agree with Abel's bloodthirsty tactics. The same man that recommended poisoning the town, killing even innocents. They must confront the dichotomy involving lives. She looks towards Subaru and meekly asks, "Could you do something about this?" He freezes, as if struck by lightning. Why did Rem look at Subaru with eyes that looked like she was holding on to him? That one-sided, selfish question started a fire in Natsuki Subaru. At first, feeling anger for having been distrusted, beaten, and looked down upon, now being trusted with a bloodless siege. But even if he got angry, he would no doubt be forgiven. That was how selfish the option Rem chose was. However, what grew in Subaru at that moment was a sense of duty that arose from the very bottom of his soul. Evading combat, Flop O'Connell. Preparing for battle, Vincent Abelix. The one who must find a pathway different from these two, Natsuki Subaru. Why was that? That was because he is the hero that Rem believed in. He thinks, he concentrates, he imagines. He grasps all of the possibilities before a thought appears with a flash. He put his hand on Luis, and she only looked up at him. Rem looked at him almost as if she still had her memories, believing Subaru could reach the answers others could not. He barges into the meeting room, Abel flaring his nose in dissatisfaction, telling him he has no role here. Subaru yanks his mask off again, telling him that since he's so terrible at being persuasive, he'll do it himself. He has cracked the code for a bloodless fall of Garal. This is when we get a prime example of what I was discussing earlier. We build up to the plan of Subaru's, whether it be the ideological conflict between Subaru and Vincent, or even Lagunica versus Arakiya, something that stews for this entire volume, and we even see Subaru grapple with his morality with Todd, only for the next chapter to give us the resolution to the plot point of the Bloodless Siege, showing us exactly what Subaru has in mind without any of the groundwork being done for it. Then, the rest of the volume gives us even more build-up, and then the climax. We basically get a chapter, a named chapter by the way, for the previously mentioned commander, Zakir Osman. In it, we learned he is named the Womanizer, a name he enjoys more than his last nickname. He was surrounded by sisters, giving him a unique sense of respect for women in this world. That respect led him to be partial to the Arakians, being an all-female tribe. He would spite the capital's orders and attempt to stick to a persuasive approach until he hears of the attack in the forest. He will wait for reinforcements before he crushes them. That is when he hears of a band of traveling entertainers in town. To raise morale, the army present attends their show. The crowd becomes enchanted by the woman dancing on stage as she crosses the hall to him and requests his sword. He did not have the option to refuse and not pass the blade over. That was why it was his loss, as Vincent had his unsheathed sword pointed at his throat. A chapter that likely did not need to be a named chapter, but there we go. This is when, at least in the web novel, we get 3 chapters of recap to show us how we got here. I really do not like that. There was absolutely zero reason to not just play it chronologically here. We learn that Subaru hatched a plan for himself, Abel, and Flop to enter in drag alongside Kuna and Tarita to take down Zakir without killing anyone. Gee, I wonder how the plan goes. The total whiplash of Volume 27 going from Subaru being slaughtered by Todd like 5 separate times, making Subaru literally shit his pants in fear, and the ideological conflict and morality of taking lives, to then be juxtaposed with 3 chapters of Subaru and co wearing drag and doing their makeup. Personally, it's a miss for me. I don't even necessarily mind the plan of cross-dressing to sneak in and take the city from the inside, when it's been repeatedly stated that they are at a numbers disadvantage. I wasn't expecting some huge brawl or anything. The execution of this was just corny. Before they see Zakir, Jamal enters their quarters and gets super pushy and aggressive with the girls. When he entered the room, Subaru's heart stopped, and he briefly thought that he hoped Todd was killed by that arrow. It was a difficult thought. He didn't want to see Todd, nor did he want Todd's death. That man exists as an object of Subaru's fears, and shortly after, he encounters the man himself. Subaru's throat trembles, and obviously since Todd only sees an unfamiliar woman, he's confused. He knows that Todd would see through any lie he tells him. Trying to use any knowledge gained from Return by Death would lead to Todd relying on his gut. Subaru, or Natsumi, says that she is scared. Not just of Todd, but due to being forced here. He apologizes on behalf of Jamal, asking her to be open-minded and to forgive the cruel man. Jamal reappears, ready to harass women, yet again, only for Todd to rein him in, complicating our view of this man yet again. As they leave, he turns back to Natsumi and asks her name. This mere question makes Subaru freeze yet again. This very reason was why Rem had been wary of Todd to begin with. Natsumi Schwartz, that is my name. And Todd accepts it, stumbling off with Jamal. We finally get to Abel pulling out Zeker's sword, telling him to have his men disarm, or his cup shall be filled with not alcohol, but blood. There was no fear in the man's eyes, but hesitation, almost as if he recognized the person standing before him. 2 soldiers move towards Abel, being stopped by Kuna and Tarita, narrowly avoiding killing them due to a plea from Flop. Zakir will disarm, and Abel tells Subaru to burn the flag on top of the building because he has done nothing, as Jamal feels like something is wrong while patrolling with Todd, and the flag atop City Hall bursts into flames, a barbaric act that took Todd off guard. And right beside that very flag, he saw her. Natsumi Schwartz. The more he thought about it, the more it matched. Natsuki Subaru, the poster child of war, had easily surpassed and ridiculed him. Jamal wants to rush in, but Todd pulls him back. With the city hall burning, surely the entire tavern is dead. The 2 escape through a hole that they had just plugged in the wall, as Todd states he will remember him as Natsumi now, a poster child of war. Mizelda compliments Subaru on his accomplishment. He has shown courage through wisdom, as Rem appears to make sure he isn't injured again. He regrets that it wasn't purely Bloodless, looking at the 2 people Kuna and Tarita had injured. Rem asks why Subaru remains in drag, and he says he didn't have the time to change. He never intended to stay as Natsumi, right? He's very good at cross-dressing and keeps calling himself cute. Yeah, with all the themes of gender identity going on in these books, I'm definitely interested to see where this could go. Abel is alone with Zeker until Subaru joins them, and Zeker already seems entirely loyal. It is his duty as General of the Emperor to respond to his requests. He feels honored. An opponent transcending even the clouds above knew him, his strengths and weaknesses, and upon that, built his strategy around him. With Zakir online, Abel has acquired a strong fighting force, and he informs them reinforcements are coming. The word reinforcements pings throughout the room, as Abel sits up demanding that they close the gate now. Louise begins to shed large tears, as if she is afraid of something. She points towards a corner of the hall, but there was nothing. There should have been nothing. Abel calls upon Zelda, who fires 4 arrows directly at it, shattering the floors and walls, before a disembodied voice claims that something like that won't kill her. In the blink of an eye, Zelda was engulfed in flames. Holly dumps water on her, as Arakiya makes herself known. Now ranking 2nd among the 9 divine generals. She stands as the 2nd strongest person in the Empire. The Shadrach attempts to stand up to her, but it's no use. They get sucked into a massive tornado she creates, causing everyone to get flung around the room. Subaru hopelessly searches for Rem while being tossed around, only to spot Abel on a half-destroyed balcony, leaning against the railing with blood pouring down his forehead. Arakiya says he lied, and she will never forgive him. She steps towards him, but a pillar comes crashing down. Rem has knocked it over, attempting to crush Arakiya in her warpath, but she is unharmed. She remarks it is unusual to see an Oni, telling her to not get in her way. Rem continues to try and fight back, but it's useless. Arakiya says she isn't good at controlling her own strength, and if she persists, Rem too will fly away. Why stop now, then, she asks. Arakiya picks up a branch to give Rem the send-off she requests, but there was no way Subaru could tolerate such a thing. He was willing to die if it meant protecting her. Protecting Rem, against his back, he spreads his hands. What a comical sight. Those words reach his ears as he prepares to have everything taken away. He slowly opens his eyes, however, as nothing occurs. Death had not befallen his body, and someone stands in front of him now, with their back against him. The being that had appeared cut down all the destruction that was supposed to come, while holding up a glowing red sword in her right hand. Pompous, arrogant, crimson eyes convinced that everything in this world would kneel at their feet. Priscilla Buriel had a blood-colored smile on her face. As usual, we're going to go over the required side stories for this phase. Just like last time, there are 3. The first one jumps back to Emilia and Co. at the watchtower as she tries to get Volcanica to protect the tower. He continues to repeat his Arc 6 line before a talon on his foot shakes and cracks. Emilia believes it is Volcanica's way of proving that a promise was made. Even a mere fragment of his talon is made up of an enormous quantity of mana. With this, he will be able to distinguish the party from a distance. We also learn that dragons are just enormous masses of mana, which is raw. The first thing the party decides to do is talk to Roswell. He is unable to assist them in finding a path to Arakiya due to the flying dragons, but perhaps Otto's wisdom will be of use when he returns from Priscilla. The second story is about Rem and Vincent at the very end of Volume 26. Rem wants to get away from Vincent's war, but he says he is war itself. No matter where you are, no matter how far you flee, the flames of war shall surely find you. They shall once more embroil you, engulf you. He informs Rem that Subaru will take her and run, but will fail. Let him do so. He must learn and face reality. The final story is a Todd story, taking place when Subaru made a break for it last volume. Todd gives the soldiers some water, which he had poisoned by the snake's venom. He is sure they have a lot of questions, but he is not going out of his way to answer them, and he takes his axe out once more. He goes to Jamal, who is washing himself in a river since he got covered in a snake's blood, and Todd says the rest of the search party didn't believe in him like Jamal does. Todd desires to reorganize and squash those cunning Shodrock. Volume 27 was unbelievably good, besides those last 3 chapters. Todd quickly, and I mean quickly, skyrocketed up my tier list, and the Vincent and Subaru conversations are always absolute peak. The issue is, as mentioned earlier, the story blowing its load and then telling us how it got blown, and the total whiplash of the cross-dressing stuff. Great pacing till the final few, incredible character work. Todd owns. The moral battle between Subaru and Vincent is peak, and I can't wait for Phase 3. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for the funny YouTube algorithm. You can check the description down below to follow me on Twitter, where I'm objectively correct all the time. You can also join my Discord, where we talk about My Hero Academia, ReZero, Jujutsu Kaisen, and stuff like that. And you can also now become a YouTube member, which basically just gives you access to behind-the-scenes content, a little badge on comments, and live stream chats, and access to some emotes. Only do so if you want to support the channel, though. But that's about it, though. Thank you for watching. See ya.